This is a module on the second 3 of Marzano's 9 essential strategies for effective instruction. All 3 of these strategies are connected to the larger goal of helping students develop understanding. The first strategy is using cues, questions, and advance organizers. Teachers can use all 3 of these tools to help students access prior knowledge and use it as a bridge to new learning. Let's talk about cues and advance organizers first, since they are closely related. Cues are hints about the content of an upcoming lesson. They are used to set the stage for learning and build student anticipation. Advance organizers include a range of tactics that help students use background knowledge to learn new information, or that otherwise draw their attention to important ideas. Examples of advance organizers include brief stories that hook student interest and situate concepts within a narrative, pictures or other images that are associated with knowledge or concepts, music, film, or video, and previews of the activities and what will be learned in the upcoming lesson. When it comes to questions, there are actually 4 different levels. Level 1 questions ask students to name or identify objects, events, or concepts, and are used to build students' conceptual vocabulary. For example, what is an isosceles triangle? Or, which different groups were involved in the American Revolutionary War? Level 2 questions ask students to organize and classify information. For example, which of the following triangles are isosceles? How did you know? Was the American Revolution an example of modern or pre-modern warfare? Why? Level 3 questions require higher order thinking and require students to elaborate on information or link it to what they already know. For example, if I have a triangle with 2 acute angles, what must be true about the remaining angle? Why? What similarities exist between Great Britain's involvement in the Revolutionary War and America's involvement in the Vietnam War? And finally, Level 4 questions move to the abstract level and ask students to reflect on and refine their perceptions about concepts. For example, what are the relationships between the sides of various types of triangles and the angles opposite those sides? Whose interests were served in the Revolutionary War? Whose were not? You might notice that the increasing levels of questions move students from lower to higher levels of thinking on Bloom's taxonomy. Using a tiered questioning strategy like this one helps to build student vocabulary, organize information in memory, and build verbal reasoning skills. So what are some best practices associated with cues, questions, and advance organizers? First, use these strategies to focus students on what's important. Second, use explicit cues to bring to mind relevant experiences and background knowledge. Third, ask inferential questions where students need to draw upon background knowledge to fill in the blanks. Finally, ask analytical questions. These are Level 4 type questions that ask students to analyze errors, analyze different perspectives, construct support, and identify faulty logic. One pitfall to avoid, specifically when it comes to asking questions, is failing to craft deliberate questions during the planning phase of your lesson. Particularly when it comes to higher level questions, it is helpful to think them through in advance and write them directly into your lesson plan. It's often difficult to think of well-crafted inferential or analytical questions in the moment. Some teachers have even found it helpful to create question stems for different types of questions and post them as an anchor chart in their classroom. Let's move on to our next major strategy, nonlinguistic representations. One way to think about non-linguistic representations is representing knowledge as imagery. Non-linguistic representations operate from the idea that information is either stored in the memory as words or images. There are 5 common tools associated with non-linguistic representations: graphic organizers, physical models and manipulatives, visualizing, pictures and illustrations, and kinesthetic activity. Graphic organizers are shapes and drawings that help students to organize information conceptually. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different graphic organizers that teachers could use for different purposes. The important thing for a teacher is to explicitly model and teach students how to use a graphic organizer before using it for the first time. Physical models and manipulatives are literally physical objects that students can use to either represent or practice with a concept. Visualizing involves creating mental images to associate with an idea or concept. To help students visualize, teachers can provide details that help students incorporate sounds, smells, tastes, and visual details. Either using or having students create pictures and illustrations can allow students to represent their learning in ways that are personally meaningful to them. Lastly, kinesthetic activity engages students in physical movement while they are in the process of learning. Being able to associate movements with concepts helps to codify information in the brain. When using non-linguistic representations with students, a few best practices are important to remember. First, before asking students to use or create a non-linguistic representation, it is important to model either through demonstrations or think-alouds. Second, you want to provide students a variety of opportunities to use non-linguistic representations and also model how they can use more than one as they learn a new concept or term. For example, a teacher might first ask students to mentally visualize a character from a story, and then work together to use a series of objects to represent his attributes or characteristics. Last of all, a strong practice is to teach students how to use graphic organizers as a tool for other strategies, such as hypothesizing, summarizing, or note-taking. Summarizing and note-taking is actually the next strategy we're going to talk about. Summarizing involves sorting, selecting, and combining information, while note-taking involves sorting, coding, and accessing information. Both of these strategies require students to use higher-order thinking skills. Students have to decide what to keep, what to delete, and what to replace. Summarizing and note-taking are most effective in lessons that focus on new academic content. They should not necessarily be used in lessons that involve more complex tasks like generating and testing hypotheses. One should also not make the mistake of assuming that students intuitively know how to effectively summarize or take notes on their own. Students need explicit guidance and modeling on both of these skills. For example, a teacher could teach students a rule-based summarizing strategy where they followed a series of steps to create a concise summary. First, take out the stuff that's not important to understanding. Then, take out words that repeat information. Next, replace a list of things with one word that describes them. And finally, find or create a topic sentence. The teacher would model this process for students and then have them engage in teacher-guided practice. A teacher could also create summary frames for students, which present a series of questions designed to highlight the critical elements in a specific type of text. When it comes to note-taking, no single format is correct. However, there are some best practices that teachers can use to help students take notes effectively. The first is to help students create notes as the information is presented. This can involve showing students how to organize their notes and drawing attention to important concepts. Teachers can also provide a template or graphic organizer for students to use when taking notes. Naturally, they would want to model how to use it first. Teachers should teach students a variety of note-taking formats so that students can use the one that works best for them. This can include webbing, or using shapes, colors, and arrows to show relationships, informal outlining, creating headings with big ideas and concepts and using bullet points or other marks to record more specific supporting information, or combination notes. This involves using both linguistic and non-linguistic representation while note-taking. There are also more formal note-taking strategies such as Cornell notes and thinking maps. Each of these strategies are appropriate in different situations if they are explained and modeled appropriately. Before we conclude, let's take a few moments to explore some technology tools that are helpful in implementing each of the 3 strategies we discussed in this module. Kidspiration and Inspiration are examples of software that can be used for many of these 3 strategies. Their primary purpose is for creating graphic organizers. Functionality such as color, shape, and image selection help users to produce graphic organizers that are simple or much more complex. ASU students and faculty can use Kidspiration tools through MyASU's My Apps. Poplet is another online tool used to create graphic organizers. Poplet allows users to create 5 free poplets. ReadWriteThink.org is a comprehensive website produced by the International Reading Association and the National Council of Teachers of English. Among other things, this site offers over 50 student interactives, many of which can be used to help students organize information, such as the plot diagram tool. Illuminations is a comprehensive math website from the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Like Read, Write, Think, it also offers several student interactives that can help students visualize and kinesthetically interact with math concepts. Geometric Solids is just one example of the math interactives offered here. Intel offers free online tools to help students critically think about content. The visual ranking tool in particular facilitates higher order thinking around a good question that a teacher can create for any content or subject area. Last of all, there are several mobile apps that students can use for taking notes. One advantage to using technology is easy organization and archival for future reference. Some note-taking apps allow users to add links to web pages, images, and narration. Some useful note-taking apps include Evernote, SpringPad, OneNote, and SimpleNote. This concludes the module on the second 3 of Marzano's 9 instructional strategies. It's now time to move on to our final module, helping students extend and apply knowledge.